All right, so I just want to review a little bit. One thing I love about Myron Golden is that the longer that you watch him, his content overlaps so much. So the things that he teaches you overlaps week after week. He may come back to something that he said 6 months later and he puts it back on the board. And I love that. I love that style of teaching because we all need reminders, and how he weaves so much of his stuff together. It's really awesome. And so he's like my biggest inspiration right now for teaching. And so I just want to go back over. So this week we're going to talk about how mastery is not memorization. Just because you've memorized something, you have not mastered it. Okay, so again, I'm leaving our little steps to wisdom up here, and our little how you get to be the 1%, or the 10%, 5%, 1%, 0.01. That's 1/100th of a percent. That's what I'm shooting for, in the 1/100th% of income earners in the United States. And put this down for a minute. All right, so I also want to remind us that self-discipline is the ability to control our feelings and overcome our weakness. It's the ability to pursue what one thinks is right despite the temptations to abandon it. That's the key right here. And mastery is a comprehensive knowledge or skill in a subject, or control or superiority over someone or something, right? So just going back over our definitions. Price's law, 50% of the production in any domain is made by the square root of that domain, right? If we have 4 salesmen, say the commissions for 1 month, they're going to be earned by 2 of the people, 50% of them, when that's half and half at 4. At 9, 3 people are going to make 50%. Say there's $20,000 in commission made in a month, right? 3 people are going to split 10,000 of that. The other 6 have to split the other 10,000. I mean, I know which group I'd rather be in. If there's 10,000 businesses, 100 of them are going to split 50% of that profit, right? And then when you get to America, we have about 30 million businesses. 5,477 of them are going to split the GDP. So I looked up what the GDP of America is. It's really big. Yes, it is. It's massive. $27.36 trillion. So half of that, which is 13.68 trillion, goes to 5,477 businesses, okay? That's about $2.5 million if you split it evenly. It's not going to be split evenly, but, right? So here's the other thing that Myron Golden talked about that's part of Price's Law that I heard him say on a video that he hadn't said before, is that, so then, okay, go back to the 9 because that's easier. Then you have 6, right, that are splitting the other 50% out. But Price's Law applies to those 6 too. So the square root of 6 is I don't know what, but then they're going to get 50% of what's left, and the other people are going to split basically 25% of the total, right? So that it keeps, Price's Law keeps applying to each group as it gets smaller and smaller. So you could end up with, really small piece of that pie. So just something to think about. So what goes along with this and what this teaches us, right, what Price's Law teaches us, and I have said this before, is that mediocrity scales exponentially. What does that mean? 1,000 times 1,000, right? like, an exponent is a multiplier. But excellence only scales incrementally. So when you're working in increments, you're only using your addition sign, not your multiplication sign. This is why there's so few people in this, going back over here, right? That's why this is 1/100th of a percent. Get over here, okay? Because mediocrity scales. So think about 10% of the population. We have about, I think, like 300 million people in the United States. What's 10% of that?
30. You said mediocrity scale.
Exponentially, yes. So what's, somebody have their calculator? 30 million.
10% of 300?
Yeah.
30 million.
So there's only 30 million people out of 300 million that are at this point or above, you know, like, so that's a lot of people over here in the mediocrity world, okay? A lot. Because it scales exponentially because you don't really have to do much to be mediocre, right? You don't need mastery to be mediocre. You just need to memorize things, right? So the purpose of our learning, anytime you're learning something, should be mastery, right? You don't get a driver's manual and just memorize it and think that you're going to be able to successfully drive a car, right? You have to get in the car, you have to practice turning, you have to practice like stepping on the brakes properly. So there's a lot of things you need to do. Right, but you.
We can't parallel park.
But
I remember the first.
who can parallel park? Not very many people can successfully parallel park. Y'all park cars for a living, as Eric used to tell me. I park cars for a living.
We pull in somewhere, she'd be like, "You can't make that." I'm like, "We park cars for a living."
He's like, that's what I do for a living. So, also remembering, we read the dictionary definition of mastery, right? Myron Golden likes to say that mastery is learning to execute, his daughter said this, execute effortlessly without conscious use of resources. And we'll talk about that again in a minute. Remembering that mastery is not just hearing something or watching something or listening or reading something, right? Mastery is all of those things, right? That when we're hearing, watching, or reading, we're only right here in the knowledge phase. Mastery is down here in wisdom where our skills get applied. So, poor people, here's another thing he likes to say all the time. Poor people entertain themselves in their spare time. And rich people educate themselves. And not just like going to college or doing things like that. I didn't finish college. Eric didn't finish college. We're both like two classes away from a full degree, you know. Right? We're both life came in and that's what happened. I was about to take my last class in Odessa, Texas at Odessa College, and Eric said, sell the house, we're moving. And so I'm actually 3 hours short of my degree, but so I just say I have a degree in business management, but technically with all the on-the-job training that I've had in the last 10 years, I'm pretty sure I have I'm working on my master's degree in business management at this point. Just living with Eric is a lot of business management, so that should qualify too. Right? So I want to use an example of mastery versus memorization. So think about, when did we learn the alphabet, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? Like when we're like 4, 5 years old. We memorized all the letters, but there was no way we could make a word or a sentence or a paragraph or write a book, right? You can't do that. We memorized it. We knew it. We could sing it, we could say it, we could point to the A and the Z and the L. But that's just memorization. That's right here. We were born and we didn't know any letters. We could say a lot of words, right? You can say a lot of words by the time you're 3 or 4 years old, but you don't have a concept of the pattern of the letters that make up that word until you start accumulating the knowledge, right? Then we start understanding that if we put certain letters together, we can make a word, but we start small. Oh, here's a picture of a cat. Oh, these 3 letters make a word that represents that animal, right? So we have to start assimilating that information and taking it in. And again, it's memorization still at that point, right? So we memorize the letters, then we start to form words, and then as we get a little bit older, we start to form sentences. The cat ran, the dog jumped, right? See Spot run, right? But it was still rudimentary. But we were building. We mastered the letters. Then we mastered simple words. Then we mastered simple sentences. Then we began to learn how to write a paragraph. And we could say, I saw the brown dog jump. When he jumped, he spilled the milk. Like, we learned to write a paragraph about something that happened, right? Then we learned to write a letter to a loved one. Well, I don't think they do this in school anymore. We learned this, dear so-and-so, and you have to have your comma, and sincerely, right, Rick's old enough. Like, you had to learn to write a letter. You had to learn to memorize your address, and you had to learn how to address a letter and an envelope. Like, I don't think any of that happens anymore because we have email. Like, who sends a letter in an envelope? But it's very useful. Then at some point, if you keep learning and you keep working on your writing, and Eric would always have me come look at emails that he would send, and now he has ChatGPT, so I'm really happy about that. I don't like ChatGPT, but I'm happy that I don't have to proofread and edit all of his emails and letters anymore, so I'm glad for that. I don't have that duty anymore. But at some point, as you learn about words, bigger words, what they mean, what they represent, then you could write a book, or if you're going to college and getting a master's degree, you're going to write a thesis, which is a lot of work. So this is called mastery stacking, right? We're learning one little piece and master that, then the next piece, and the next piece, and the next piece. And those are steps to get where you want to go. So mastery is not memorization, although it involves memorization. Just like music, right? Ezra, when he started in band, he's like, I want to do band. We're like, okay, well, I don't know where that came from. So he got an instrument, and they taught him which combination, there's, I think, 4 valves on his euphonium, his baritone, which combination of how to do his fingers made which note. And then what those notes look like on a bass clef, because he plays low brass, like what those notes look like on the bass clef. And they can play some notes on the treble clef, right? So he had to memorize all those. Then he was able, and he had to learn to read the music. Then he was able to play a simple song and so on, just like with writing, right? But mastery comes when you're Bach or you're Beethoven. They can play songs, they can do all that. Ezra can do all that. He can march 4 spaces this way and 12 that way and 9 over here, and all the while keeping the tune to the song and staying in rhythm. That's a mastery at a certain point. But to write a symphony, you have to write the music for every instrument in the orchestra. That's mastery on a whole nother level, right? So these are the steps that we use to do all those things, as we've been talking about for weeks, right? So the thing we talk about is, are you using your time wisely and educating yourself, or are you just entertaining yourself, right? Are you memorizing? So say you memorize the 12 steps to the sale. It's one thing to memorize them. It's another thing to go out there and effortlessly and smoothly move from step to step to step to step, and not, okay, I have to meet and greet, and you do that, and then you go, and then you pause and you think, now I do this step, and now I do this step. You've seen people dance. Like, I used to watch Dancing with the Stars. You knew the people who were counting every single step for, okay, and then I'm going to go this way, and now I go this way. And then there were people who came out and they just moved through it effortlessly. You had to memorize at some point all of the steps, what the counts were, and then they went out and performed it. Some people never got past the level of needing to count every step to get where they needed to go. And you could tell the difference in the mastery that happened, right? So like objection handling, are you just memorizing the word tracks, which you have to do, or are you learning practice, drill, rehearse? Like Eric says all the time, practice, drill, rehearse, practice, drill, rehearse, practice, drill, rehearse, right? I don't know where I heard this. Amateurs practice until they get it right, and professionals practice until they can't get it wrong, right? It just comes out. It just comes out, right? And if you do have a misstep, nobody knows, right? It's like you learn in acting. I did a lot of community theater back in the day. If you make a mistake, the audience has no idea that you said the wrong line unless you telegraph that you said the wrong line. And if the people on the stage with you know you said the wrong line, you just say something else that might not be any part of the script to take the script back where it's supposed to be to get you on track. And the audience will never know unless you go, like, right, unless you telegraph it. That's what happens when you have mastery. You can hit a bump and keep going, and no one knows but you, right? So what I wrote down is, are you merely memorizing objection handling so you can repeat the words, or do you have to search for the correct response, or are those things just flow? These things should flow from the knowledge that you've accumulated effortlessly. They should flow, and without the conscious retrieval of the information, right? It's like having a really high RAM on your computer, right? It can just access information. If you got a 4 gigabyte RAM computer, you get the little thing, right? The little circle, just swirls. Okay, people can see that on your face when you're doing that. So mastery is getting that RAM, and a few months ago I talked about your operating capacity, like amping up your personal RAM so that it goes like this. It just goes like this, right? So the big question, are you learning in order to memorize, or are you learning in order to master? And one thing that when he was talking about JR, right, understanding some things aren't personal, it could be a matter of your mindset, your tool set, or your skill set. So take that question. Am I just learning this so I can memorize it and then spew it back out? Or am I memorizing it in order to refine it and perfect it and master it? So that's my stuff on mastering today.
Let's go, JR!